Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn. In today's episode, we're talking about the top 10 offensive centers in the 2024 NFL Draft Class based on data. So we're going to be looking at the athleticism data and other statistical factors to determine who the 10 best offensive centers are in the 2024 NFL Draft Class. Stay tuned until the end of the video where we reveal who the top center is, who might be surprising, might not, but we'll see. But in terms of how I graded these prospects, there's a couple things I did. First of all, I looked at athleticism scores. Athleticism, I look at mass density athleticism. So I take their mass density, which is weight divided by height, and then I compare it to things like the vertical and the broad jump, which gives you the explosion score, the 40, which gives you the speed score, and the short shuttle and the three cone, which gives you the flexibility score or change of direction score in many ways. So again, that is how I do athleticism testing. I also take a look at a thing called EAV scores. EAV is expected approximate value scores. For the purposes of the video, we're going to call it a data grade. So what is it? Well, it takes physical measurements such as height, weight, arm length, athleticism testing, again, the 40, the vertical, the broad jump, all that kind of stuff, based on their mass density. Also takes a look at their age, their SRS and SOS. So how good of a team were they on? How tough a competition did they face? How young were they? All those things also factor into it because they also have an impact in terms of the scores. I understand some people might say, well, that's kind of biased towards big time schools, but again, the vast majority of all-pro and Pro Bowl offensive linemen typically come from bigger schools. They come from Big Ten. They come from the SEC. They come from these programs. A lot of it could be because they got better coaching, better facilities, better weight rooms. All these kinds of things definitely factor into things. So I do understand the fact that you are going to have some small school prospects that are just great offensive linemen, but because of where they played, you're going to kind of discount them a little bit. I totally understand that, but the data trends are what they are. So you kind of have to base it on those types of factors. But with all this stuff out of the way, let's get to the list. So number 10, the number 10 best center based on data in the 2024 NFL Draft Class is Jalen Sundell from North Dakota State. Now the pros, above average speed score. Cons, obviously, level of competition. His data grade is 63.38 out of 100. Not the best grade, but centers typically don't have the best athleticism traits. So taking a look at the athleticism scores at the center position, if you watched any of my other videos, you should see that centers typically have less athleticism compared to tackles, compared to guards, if you will. So they can kind of get away with not being the best athletes. But at least in Sundell's place, he had at least an above average speed score, so that's positive for him. Not much else to really look at and project, which is why he's number 10 on this list, but he does have at least a decent enough speed score to be considered somebody who could become a starter. Then we get to number 9 on this list, which is Cedric Von Prawn Granger, or Granger, probably Granger. Pros, above average athleticism. Cons, above average, or I should say average age score. His data grade is 74.95 out of 100. Taking a look at his athleticism traits, he had a 52 percentile explosion score, a 67 percentile speed score. Now, in terms of athleticism, I should say 52 percentile speed and then 67 percentile flexibility score. In terms of athleticism at the center position, so just want to make sure I get that out right. Didn't do explosion testing, but had speed and flexibility. In terms of athleticism at the center position, centers typically don't need a ton of athleticism. So all the athleticism that you see right here out of Cedric is enough to make him a starter, is enough to potentially make him a Pro Bowl player. When you look at his speed score and his explosion, I shouldn't say explosion, but his flexibility testing. So all those factors definitely could make him into a decent center. So don't be discouraged from this if you have him as like one of your top centers in the class. But his overall data is not as impressive compared to other centers in this class based on his athleticism traits. So that is, again, why he's number 9 on this list, and I just want to give a little bit more explanation as to why he is where he is on the list. Now we get to number 8, which is Drake Nugent from Michigan. Pros, elite flexibility score. Cons, below average age and below average explosion score. His data grade is 77.37 out of 100. Taking a look at his athleticism traits, as you can see, elite flexibility for his size. Speed score is a little lacking, and his explosion score is also a little lacking, but he does have the traits of a potential Pro Bowl center. So based on his flexibility traits, he would test extremely well, sort of a great change of direction type center in terms of leverage and all those other sort of things. So I think he has a starter profile. He's kind of a tweener metrically. He's in between a Pro Bowler, in between a starter, but he definitely has a pretty strong profile because of that elite flexibility score. Then we get to number 7 on this list, which is Charles Turner III from LSU. Pros, near elite explosion score. Cons, average age score. Data grade is 80.54 out of 100. Taking a look at his athleticism traits, as you can see here, near elite explosiveness, above average speed, above average flexibility for his size. Kind of inverted a little bit, so compared to the other player, his explosiveness is much more impressive than his speed and his flexibility. This type of center definitely works better in sort of a ZBS zone blocking scheme, where he's able to kind of, use his explosiveness to kind of explode into different directions, to kind of put him in place to set the edge, not really set the edge, but set the point of attack in that particular scheme. But it's definitely impressive profile for him. And we get to number 6 on this list, which is Jacob Monk from Duke. Pros, near elite speed and above average explosiveness. Cons, did not perform agility drills or vertical jump. His data grade is 82.45 out of 100. So that is a pretty decent overall profile. Taking a look at his athleticism, as you can see, near elite speed score, above average explosiveness. Those are pretty good traits for Jacob Monk. Taking a look at number 5, we get Zach Frazier from West Virginia. Pros, above average projected speed score. Cons, did not test yet. So his data grade is 82.49 out of 100. This would definitely be one of the prospects that you might say is a little controversial because he hasn't really done any testing. So how can you really believe his projected speed score could be slower? But I think he's a pretty decent prop. When you watch him on film, he definitely looks to have the speed that he was projected to have. Taking a look at his athleticism trait, 70 percentile in terms of his speed score. Again, that's not a bad marker to hit. I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to hit that. So, not to say that we would really know 100% what his speed score is, but definitely on his projected speed score, he would at least be able to have that potential. Then we get to number 4 on this list, which is Hunter Nourzad from Penn State. He's another person that didn't really perform testing. He had a near elite projected speed score. His overall data grade is 86.87 out of 100. Keep in mind that the data grades also take into account physical metrics such as size, arm length, age, strength of schedule, strength of team, different stuff like that. So even though his speed score is kind of helping him to be number 4 on this list, it's not the only factor as to why he's here. There's a reason why he's in the mix here, in many ways. And when you look at his speed score, great overall speed score in terms of what his projected speed score would be. And then when you add in the other factors of his level of competition at Penn State and other sort of factors like that, he definitely, needs to be at least in the discussion at the top 10 center. Then, of course, we get to number 3 on this list, which is Dylan McMahon, elite explosiveness and flexibility. Cons, below average weight. Data grade 89.57 out of 100. A very impressive overall profile for Dylan McMahon. Taking a look at his athleticism traits, 90 percentile in terms of explosiveness, 90 percentile in terms of flexibility for his size, and then above average speed. Tested very similar sort of a zone blocking scheme center, where his explosiveness and flexibility are much more impressive than his actual speed score. But he has a potential to be the best center from this class because this is a very impressive athleticism profile. Then, of course, we get to number 2 on this list, which is Graham Barton from Duke. Pros, elite explosiveness and projected speed. Cons, doesn't really have any. Data grade, 98.71 out of 100. Very impressive speed score, as you can clearly see right here. And when you added his physical metrics, you know how big he is, his size, his arm length, his level of competition, all those different kind of things really help to kind of put him as one of the best centers in this particular draft class. I haven't even talked about the RAS again, and I know what I'm doing is a little bit like RAS, but with some tweaks to it, which makes it a little better. But I do think that this is a pretty impressive profile for him. And then we get to the number one center in the 2024 NFL draft class, which I don't think anybody would be surprised who that center is, which is Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. Pros, elite athleticism overall. Cons, average height. Data grade 98.91 out of 100. Now, taking a look at his athleticism traits, elite explosiveness, elite speed, and also had some, some impressiveness from that kind of perspective. So I really like him in many ways. He has a lot of impressive traits for him. For Jackson Powers Johnson, which sounds like a law firm, which I know somebody's going to make that joke at one point, probably already have. But I think he's definitely very impressive. I don't quite think a lot of people compared him to Jason Kelsey. Jason Kelsey was the opposite of him in terms of Jason Kelsey showed that he had elite flexibility for his size. That was the most impressive quality from Jason Kelsey was his flexibility for his size. So we don't have that confirmation that Jackson Powers Johnson is that type of player. Kelsey was also much larger than Jackson Powers Johnson in terms of his overall size. So those are things to kind of look at with him. But overall, I think he is an impressive center in this class. I do think he deserves to be the number one center in this class. And I think all the reasons that I just mentioned are why that is. With all this stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. Of course, my name is Jim Coburn. You can follow my other work at Geometrics on Twitter, formerly known X, formerly known as Twitter. You can also check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn. Check out the other videos as well that just popped up if you want to see more videos of mine. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.